the way people interact within different institutional environments. So why is it all of Bryan's models are actor-oriented. All of his models focus on a manifestation of rational choice within alternative institutional environments. And they recognize the essential role of private property in providing incentives and information to agents so that they can engage in successful action. Outside of a setting of private property, I doubt whether or not Bryan would say that individuals could coordinate their activities with others to achieve advanced material production. They could, in fact, maybe coordinate around some common goal of being really poor, like I want to be a hermit or something like that, but they're not necessarily going to become an advanced economy that lifts the majority of its population out of poverty. All right, so all of Bryan's sort of focus in his Austrianism or his questions have an Austrian twang to them, if not necessarily an Austrian seal of approval, which I'm against. So to the extent Bryan's not an Austrian economist, I might contend that I'm not an Austrian economist. But it happens I'm the editor of the Review of Austrian Economics. So what does that mean? It means I pretty much define what Austrian economics is. So I define it, sky's blue. So why does this matter? The reason why it matters, I think, is I think there is a scientific concern. We just want to get at the truth. I mean, Bryan's right. By the way, I only missed one question on his libertarian purity test. Can I say this in this audience? I think I can. Yeah. I missed one question. It turns out I'm weak on political assassination of families. I thought that might be a little bit over the top. But everything else I scored on. I got all the right answers on that one. So Bryan and I share tremendous amounts of ideological interest with one another, and my own view is that there's a certain scientific concern which has to do with getting at the truth about the nature of why markets are superior to governmental organizations. And I think that lies precisely in this role that institutions have in shaping the way that individuals behave. Okay, we are lazy humans. We're neither the devil nor an angel. We just are. We're not perfect calculators of pleasure or pain, and we're not persistently stupid. Oh, I need to get out that door. I keep walking into the glass. Okay, that's sort of a reasonable position too. Would you call that neoclassical to say that I would eventually find the door? All right? I mean, you would say that is. Okay, fine. We're not persistently stupid, unless that we pay no cost, to doing it. I don't think that that's the essence of the problem. The essence of the problem is, how do these institutions arise so that individuals can cooperate with one another to realize the benefits of exchange? I don't care if you call that Austrian. That's the question that I think we want to ask, and it just so happens that writers like Mises and Hayek ask that question too. The second point is, to go back to what I was saying before, unless you get that answer right, in my opinion, you have no defense of a free society. Ayn Rand's not going to cut it. Right? That's like battling over vanilla and chocolate ice cream. Okay? Murray Rothbard does no better. It's vanilla and chocolate ice cream again. But when you can actually bring and marshal to bear the economic consequences of choices, and show people demonstratively so that when you pursue certain institutions, you end up with freedom and prosperity, and you pursue other institutions and you end up with tyranny and poverty, then now you have an argument for why it is that some societies are not only richer but more desirable. And so it seems to me that ultimately our ideological affinity has to be based in our economics. And that lion's share of that load has to be carried by our economics. And it seems to me we're only going to get there if we in fact approach a world in which the cognitive imperfections of man focuses on the role that institutions play in allowing us to accomplish things that even our own intelligence wouldn't allow us to accomplish. And I'll stop there, and I apologize for at this late hour being boring, but
I was going to take a few minutes to respond and then open up to Q&A?
yeah.
Okay. Well, there's certainly an element of truth in your claim that, in my mind, neoclassical economics, rightly understood, is whatever I think. So I mean, there's something to that. However, I would hold it up to a higher standard. I mean, it's true that if you go over to Princeton, they don't talk a lot about search theory and how you can use that to understand entrepreneurship. But I will certainly bet that if you ask, any economist with any real-world interest, would search theory be anything about entrepreneurship? All the people at Princeton I know would say yes. And I've talked to very few of them about this. This is my bet. Right, so I can give you a list of email addresses, and we can do a blind survey. But I'm very confident this isn't just my idiosyncrasy. It's true I haven't heard them say it, but I think that they would say, well, obviously. And in terms of neoclassical economics rightly understood, I really do think this is very much along the lines of a world where people have used supply and demand to understand products for goods but not services, and saying, look, neoclassical economics rightly understood can also explain the market for services. It can. Right? So even though actually in the classical economists occasionally they say it's only limited to goods, it's just a mistake of not seeing the full breadth of the model. Right? So that would be my general point there. Is I think actually.
Can I ask you one further question?
Sure.
Austrian economics is neoclassical economics, just a variant of it. I mean, from its founding. So how would you respond to that? That it's just a variant of neoclassical economics. It's just neoclassical economics that, let's put it your way, is doesn't suffer mathematical abuse, isn't boring, and has libertarian conclusions.
So you can define not being boring into the subject itself.
Yeah, well, you're not boring because you're not dealing with simple problem situations in order for mathematical tractability.
Yeah. Well, Hayek's kind of boring.
Okay, so fine. So you rule Hayek out, but how do you deal with the? I mean, what do you mean by neoclassical economics? I think of neoclassical economics as the following: that you believe that individuals engage in rational choice. Those rational choices are judged against marginalist principles, and that you get a social, the interactions of agents under certain situations generate an equilibrium. Austrian, I mean, what I'd like to know from that is if I came back to you and said Austrian neoclassical economics rightly understood would include Austrian economics, what argument would you give? Would you just say that like the sheer ignorance stuff is confusing, or is it
makes no sense?
It's incoherent.
Yes. I mean, I literally, if that's the case, I just don't know what you could be talking about. Just sort of go through all the possibilities. None of them make sense to me.
Okay. I'll shut up and
okay. All right, now let's see. Since you use the blackboard, let's see. Can I have the pen? See, this argument is really orthogonal to radical ignorance, although it's so often bundled with it that I can't resist. Right, and this is the claim of serendipity, saying that search theory can't explain serendipity. Serendipity is a very simple explanation for how to think of serendipity. Right, if we just put your search effort on the x-axis and your expected search results on the y-axis, serendipity is just being a case where, with zero effort, you get some result on average. It's a very simple way of thinking about serendipity, saying you don't even have to try at all. Sometimes things just fall into your lap. Right? So that is, in fact, it is in no way inconsistent with search theory. It doesn't require any significant change. It's just a slight change in the reduction function. Right? So and what I say is, I'm perfectly happy to accept the existence of serendipity, but it should just be detached from the entire philosophical package, which is dragging it down. On the other hand, I'm not convinced that empirically that's such a big deal, but maybe there's any problem there. Let's see. You are correct in that my argument in the strategy has sometimes been that essentially that Rothbard is more or less equivalent to Mises, and Mises is equivalent to Austrian economics, and that's wrong. Right? Actually, though, in this talk, I singled you out to begin with. So, in fact, I think of this talk as being the critique of you and also Kerzner. And I would take that as being wrong for its very own reasons. Right? Wrong for some very different reasons. I think your description of my view about Kerzner is basically correct. What I'd say is there is a sense in which Kerzner is more sophisticated. He's more polite.